Oath and Pledge Podcast, a podcast for veterans, is brought to you by our good friend Joanna Otero at Union Home Mortgage. Whether it's refinancing or getting pre-qualified for the next home purchase, give Joanna Otero a call, 423-208-9358, 423-208-9358. Joanna Otero at Union Home Mortgage. Ever lose consciousness?
No. So backflip, stepped on it, hit a backflip, landed on my chest. Dust was everywhere. And I was wondering to myself, who got hit? You know, I couldn't see anything. My saw gunner was up in front of me pulling security down the road. My Bravo team leader was next to me. He got blasted into a wall and he got a concussion. And I just saw dirt everywhere, just smoke and stuff. And I started to feel my hands get really tight. And I looked down at my hands. I'm like, oh, shit, it was me. And then I heard my saw gunner bound up to me and my squad leader, and they were like, hey, man, you're good.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to do the same, and that I will obey.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one.
Welcome to Oath and Pledge, a podcast centered around our veterans. Through conversations, questions, and stories, we will address the topics that concern them and the public they protect. The transition out of the military, healthcare, relationships, mindsets, and more. This is Oath and Pledge. Welcome, everybody, to the official third episode of Oath and Pledge podcast. I'm your host, Clint Powell, but this podcast is really centered around the stories, the lessons learned, and just the lives of veterans, people who may be currently serving. We're going to talk about with some of them down the road, and veterans who are no longer active or in the military but take their oath very seriously, and we're getting there to get their stories and lessons learned, all that good stuff. Now, I'm in the room with two guests who have already been on the podcast and a new guest. We're going to initiate him today. But what we're going to do is go around the table very quickly. If everybody just say your name and the branch of the military you were with, and then I've got a little bit of an outline today, which is unusual for me because I'm very free, just throw something in the middle of the table. We're going to play, loosen everything up. I got some trivia questions, just 5, maybe 8 trivia questions, going to move fast. Then we're going to get into some stories. But real quick, go around the table, starting to my left. Name and what branch you're in, please, sir.
I'm Eric Buchanan. I served in the Navy from 1989 to 1994 active duty.
There we go.
Jason Smith, served in the United States Army from 2009 to 2014.
Josh Rowe, USMC, 91 to 99. Reservist.
You jumped in there like a Marine, too. Did you hear that? He's all,
Devil dog.
There we go. All right. And I'm Clint Powell. I'm a podcaster. And I was raised by the military guy, and I have a lot of friends, and I have a lot of respect. And that's kind of, to be honest, in a serious note, that is kind of the genesis of this podcast. I have watched my dad, who was in Vietnam. I've watched his journey, and I have so many friends that I thought, there's these stories sitting out there. And by the way, Josh, I want people to know that where they can go find your YouTube stories and conversations real quick, because that's
you can find clips from this podcast on my YouTube page at Josh Rowe, JOSHROE.
Yeah, and if you've not seen his other conversations with people, but a lot of them are with veterans and people who have served, they're really good. You do a really good job.
There's probably one on there with Jason Smith somewhere.
Have you got one on there?
I've done them. I'm sure they're on there somewhere.
Okay,
Jason
good.
Jason, great Jason Smith.
Yeah, he's got a fascinating story. But let me just don't look up at the screen. Look, Jason's already cheating. All right, so the Department of Defense employs about 1.3 million people on active duty. Does anybody want to take a guess what the largest branch is? Anybody want to go with that? What's the largest branch in the military?
The Army.
Okay, he said it like, okay, what's second largest? Come on, anybody else?
The Navy.
Navy.
Okay, third?
Air Force.
Fourth?
Yeah, Marines.
Marines is third. Air Force is fourth.
Is that right?
It's right there, man. It's on the internet. It's on the interwebs, so it's got to be true. Don't look at the next one. The U.S. Coast Guard is not
What's that number actually say, Clint? Third largest at 174,000. Space Force and Air Force is 333.
Yeah, but
333 is bigger than 174.
Okay, well, I was going with that in order. See, this is the problem I have with Eric, and this is the great thing. This will be edited out of the podcast. There's no way I'm going to leave that in to make you say that. So now what do you think about that, Mister?
You just gotta be confident in when you're
I said it
in your wrongness. Sometimes.
Didn't I say it right? I think I could be a politician the way I said that. I claim something completely wrong with confidence, and I'm refusing to admit I'm wrong. The U.S. Coast Guard is not in the Department of Defense. Yes, what is it a part of that?
Department of Transportation.
Homeland Security.
Oh, I guess they moved it over there when they
There you
created
go.
that.
Let's see here. You might know this one. Does anybody know
Do you
where?
hear what he just did? Kind of like what you did. Like,
Yeah.
they moved it.
It used to be Department
I
of-
was right,
At
but
one
they
time,
moved
but they
it.
moved it. I forgot
There
about
you
that.
go. Yeah. See, it goes both ways. He's
Yeah.
an attorney too. He knew. All right. So where's the Foo Fighters? It's a band, but does anybody know where the term Foo Fighters comes from? Oh, if you don't know this,
Something
Eric,
about fighter jets.
Yes.
I forget what era though.
you don't know.
I don't
do you?
know this one.
I found something. In addition to being a popular band, the term Foo Fighters can be traced back to World War II when American and British aircraft pilots reported bright lights that would change direction and speed away faster than any aircraft possibly could. No one was able to determine who piloted these crafts and what they were, and they were given the nickname Foo Fighters.
Oh, wow.
There you go. Just do one or two more. We'll be done here. Just somebody take a guess. The percentage of civilian workforce that is made up by veterans. Just take a guess.
10%.
Ooh, that's a pretty good guess, man.
10 to 12%.
Yeah, I would say somewhere in the teens.
Y'all did get 7%.
7%.
Oh, wow.
7% right there. All right, and Eric, you have a trivia. I want to give you the floor on the trivia, and then we're going to move on to stories. You go.
Yeah,
Stories.
so just this week, the Republican National Committee nominated J.D. Vance as the vice presidential nominee. If he's elected, will he be the first ever guy who served on active duty only as an enlisted guy? Or if not, who else has served as either president or vice president only as an enlisted guy?
I don't know. I had this pulled up a minute ago, and I got off that. I wish I could have seemed so smart if I had it in front of me.
There are a crap ton of presidents and vice presidents who are veterans, but almost all of them got a commission at some point, or they started out as officers.
Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm thinking through the list, and nobody comes to mind. Definitely not.
I didn't know this before I looked it up, but
Then there's no way I'll know it. I'm just going. I'm out. I'm running out of the running right now. Look, me and Jason are the quietest
Oh,
people.
awkward silence, man. I don't know this answer at all.
He's looking
I'm
dead
here
at
for
me.
support. You guys got this. You can do it.
I don't know.
Who's got?
So Walter Mondale served as a corporal in the Army in Korea on active duty.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and he's the only vice president or president who did all their active duty only as an enlisted guy. A whole bunch of guys back in the 1800s served in the National Guard, militia, and the Civil War, and all those wars
Sure.
back then. But that was in their state militias, not regular U.S. Army, Marines, Navy. So will he be the first Marine or not? Has there ever been another Marine
Well, I already know the answer
to
because you
serve
said
as
it before.
vice president or president?
Anybody want to take a stab at it?
It's 50-50, right?
I can't think of one.
No.
Yeah, he'll be the first one to ever have. He'll be the first ever to have served as a Marine and then go on to be a vice president or president. And there's only been one guy who served in any branch of the Air Force, any part of the Air Force, and that was George W. Bush, who served in the National Guard,
The Air Guard. Yeah.
the Air Guard. But no Air Force active duty has ever been. So no Marine and no Air Force active duty has become vice president or president.
So I didn't know this one.
Yeah.
Military. 30 of the United States presidents served in the U.S. Army. 2 earned the rank of 5-star general, Washington Eisenhower. And I didn't know this one about Teddy Roosevelt. I didn't know he'd won the Medal of Honor. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Personally. I didn't
I had
know
no
that.
idea
You
about
need
that.
to go to the Heritage
Yeah.
Center. There's a whole exhibit there about it.
Yeah, I had no idea. I feel smarter now.
San Juan Hill.
Oh, really? Okay, cool. You ready? Let's go for this. Jason, how you doing, man? You've been the quietest guy in the room over there.
I'm doing all right. How are you?
We're doing good. So what I did on the last couple of podcasts is I cut out Josh's story and put it out. I cut out John's, and made it short, and I cut out Eric's. So that's what I'm going to do with you today. We're going to ask you some questions, and I want both of you guys to feel to ask questions too, because your story takes a different turn than the other 3 guests that we've had so far. Let's just start this off real quick. Tell everybody, remind everybody what branch you went into, what years you served, and then we'll just start asking questions from there, man.
Yeah, so I joined the Army as an infantryman from 2009 to 2014, and I got injured in 2012.
So when did you deploy? You said 9 you were deployed, or was that later after that?
That's when I joined. My first year was in Korea from September 09 to September 10, and then I went to Afghanistan in March 2012.
What took you into the military? What was the genesis of that, and why the Army?
My mother and father both served, so I saw it growing up, and I knew I wanted to do it. But for a while after high school, I kind of just farted around, did like young adult stuff, and then I realized it's time to really grow up. So I joined at 23.
That's Josh. Your story was kind of like you kind of had.
I can
some
relate
downtime.
to that. Yeah. Mine was more in college, and then like taking a full load, and then all of a sudden, wait, I only have 6 hours. What happened? Oh, I just dropped a lot of classes because I was doing what he was doing, farting around or whatever, whatever he said.
Yeah, guys don't do good sometimes, and me and Eric have talked about this too when it comes to organizations. And you three have actually experienced it, but if we don't have, whether it's sports or something to drive us and put boundaries around us, we tend to wander, and we tend to make some bad decisions or
Controlled chaos.
Controlled chaos.
Yeah. But but I think, just to defend it in some way is like, I think that's important to figure out who you are, what you like, what you want to do.
Yeah.
Because some people in this world just go, I'm going to take this path, and they end up at 40 and miserable, and so I think a little bit of exploring is good for you.
You kind of get some consequences, right?
That's
you start
right.
making some
That's
decisions, and you wake up one morning going, well, this didn't go as planned. Maybe there's another option out there.
Hey, Jason, you said both your parents were in the military. Were they both in the Army?
They were, yeah.
Did they meet each other in the Army?
They did. Yeah, my mother outranked my father. And then during 90, she got out because things were heating up. They didn't both want to be deployed if anything happened. So
I'm your parents' age.
I just felt older.
Yeah, because I was on active duty in 90 too.
Where were you?
I was still in flight school though. I didn't get done flight school until September of 90.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So tell me, remind me one time, what year did you get to Afghanistan, or was it Iraq?
It was March 2012.
It was Afghanistan,
that I went to
right?
Afghanistan.
Okay. Let's start right there, man. Walk us through. I've heard this story before, but we're not in a hurry. So just kind of walk us through. How long were you in country before the injury happened, and then the day of the injury, what you can remember, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
And what was your job over there too? What were you guys assigned to be doing?
So we were just helping ANCOP, Afghan National Army, and I went there March 2012 for an 8-month deployment, and I got hit July 25th, which was exactly the 4-month mark. My job over there was a team leader, and I was in charge of 5 other guys, but I was also the lead Valen. So anytime we would step off, I'd be about 80 to 150 feet in front of everybody else, clearing a path for people with a metal detector looking for IEDs. And oddly enough, I was pretty proficient at that. I never got hurt doing that, but it's when I let my guard down and when I wasn't doing the thing that I was supposed to be doing, that's when I got hurt. July 25th, it was in the morning. I was teaching a class to the ANCOP on how to find IEDs in the ground, and we heard an explosion. And we were spun up to go see what happened. And when I got there was a road, and it's called daisy chained. The guy was emplacing multiple IEDs in one area. And fortunately, he blew himself up. And I remember everything from the day. And I remember what it smelled like. I remember the heat on my back and my neck. I remember everything, the sounds. So there was a road, then there was a ditch to the left of the road, then there was a mud wall. And we had thought that when he blew himself up, he had crawled into a hole on the wall. So we dropped in the ditch, went over the wall, looked for him, couldn't find him. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before getting to that spot, they do what's called linear markings, and they'll put rocks on the side of a road. Maybe 10 or 12 big rocks that let the locals know, like, hey, this is a hot spot. Don't walk this way. And I told my leadership, I was like, hey, man, there's linear markings, and watch out. And he's like, okay, keep going. Go 10 feet more. There's stuff in the trees, and that's what they do as well. They put rags and shirts. And
when you say they, the people that are placing the IEDs,
yeah, the
right?
Taliban, yeah.
Okay.
And they're putting that in there to let the locals know that in that village, do not go this way. It's bad here. And then when they have another linear marking, that's the end of the danger zone. And I was like, we can't go this way. And we had to do what we had to do. So we went there, jumped back over the fence of the wall after not finding the gentleman. And there was a hat that was in the ditch that is now on the road. So I thought my guys that were pulling security for me had thrown the hat from the ditch to the road. So I started doing a BDA, which was a battle damage assessment. And I bent down to pick up that hat, putting a lot of my weight on my left leg and reaching down with my left hand, and I stepped on an IED.
So is it, and I have zero experience, is it a sound you hear? Is it a feeling? Do you know immediately? Did you know it immediately, or does it go off immediately? I don't know.
It goes off immediately. Mm-hmm. It's not like the movies where you hear clicks and stuff, but that hat is always going to haunt me. I don't know how that hat ended up right on top of that IED.
You don't think it was? Oh,
I mean, we had our guys pulling security down the roads and everything, so I don't know.
Now, when you say our guys, did that include any of the Afghan army guys?
Yeah.
That may have not necessarily been completely loyal to
the way that we clear
good guy's side.
compounds and the way that they clear compounds is entirely different. We'll go in and look in every corner, and they'll come in there, they'll stick their head in the comment like, "Oh, we're good." I'm like, "Whoa, hold on, no, we got to go in." You know.
Why is there a difference, you think? Is it just training? Is it training or willingness or both?
Both.
Yeah.
I think we're trained to be on alert and go through and clear, and that's the only time that infantry can do their job is when we're deployed. Mm-hmm. So we take that very seriously, and it's their own country, and if they don't really want to do it, you can't make them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, you step, and it's immediate.
Yep.
And I've asked you these questions before, some of them, so I kind of know some of the answers. But did you ever lose consciousness?
No. So backflip, stepped on it, hit a backflip, landed on my chest. Dust was everywhere, and I was wondering to myself, who got hit? I couldn't see anything. My saw gunner was up in front of me, pulling security down the road. My Bravo team leader was next to me. He got blasted into a wall, and he got a concussion. And I just saw dirt everywhere, just smoke and stuff. And I started to feel my hands get really tight. And I looked down at my hands. I'm like, oh, shit, it was me. Mm. And then I heard my saw gunner bound up to me and my squad leader. And they were like, hey, man, you're good. Things that I wasn't even thinking of. I was like, hey, man, your junk is still there. You're good. I'm like, super, They're like, your legs are still there. I'm like, great. And they flipped me over after they did the tourniquets. And I was like, you guys are liars. I was in shock at this time. So everything was just like comedic. And I was just like, no way. One was hanging on by just a thread. The other one was completely gone. And they had to bound with me to go to an area where they could start doing aid on me. But when they were running with me, that leg was hanging on by like a thread, and they were just, it was bouncing. And I was just like, guys, you got to stop. I'm a little soft right now. You got to relax. So they held the leg for me and set me down, and the medic did some stuff, and it all failed. It was just faulty equipment, I guess, and they were able to get a fentanyl lollipop on me. And I was actually talking to my friend who got hit the same day as me. We had the same birthday, same initials, and we were best friends before when we were active. And he was telling me all the stuff he was telling me. He was giving me sternum rubs to keep me open because he told me he thought that I wasn't going to make it, because you can't run fluids on a busted appendage. Both my arms were jacked up, both my legs were gone, and the one thing they were going to try and do was put a fast line on my chest, which was 9 small needles and a big needle right on the sternum, and it broke. So they were just kind of like, well, let's just make him comfortable. But the chopper got there in time, and he told me that I threatened my platoon sergeant. I saw him taking a knee, and they were asking questions, and I was like, you better effing promote me. My fingers are like hanging off my hand, and like, I want my 5. And he's just like, yeah. All right, man.
Did you find yourself, looking back on it, that you now realize they were saying stuff to you that you would have been saying to someone else to kind of calm in the moment and give them assurance? And yeah, it's
an eerie feeling too to know that 12 years after your injury that there was a brief moment where they didn't think you were going to make it. And I do remember going in and out. I remember how it felt just to be super tired. It was quite interesting.
If you don't mind me asking kind of the tough question for our audience who can't see what you look like today, how far up are your legs gone?
Yeah.
And what's the permanent damage to your arms and hands? Because when you first walk in the room and somebody doesn't see your legs, you look like a very athletic, fit guy. You obviously are being athletic, which we'll get to in a little bit. So you look pretty healthy and athletic, but knowing what the damage was, talk about that a little bit for the people who can't see you right now.
So my left leg is amputated above the knee. It's about 14 inches long, and then my right leg is 2 inches below the knee. And my right hand is missing my pinky ring and middle knuckles. The bone in my right hand is from my hip. There's no flexor, no extender tendons. There's no extender tendons in my right hand. And then my left hand has a gap taken out in the palm, and then my right and left arms were blown open.
You right-handed?
Left.
Oh, so your better hand is the hand that was dominant anyway. So
that was the one closest to the explosive too.
Holy cow!
Yeah, crazy. All I got was this little weird pinky thing.
So, at what point in all that did you realize just how bad it was, and the extent of all that.
So I would say I knew it was bad, but I was the perfect infantryman because I'm just like, I had to buff out, whatever, it's fine. On to the next thing. I would say dumb enough just to get by, but I let it affect me as much as I wanted it to. But it wasn't until I got so when I got hurt, they took me to Germany to be stabilized, and then they took me to San Antonio. And it wasn't until the first time I saw my legs actually after all the bandages came off that I really broke down and started crying. I knew it was bad, but when you actually see it, that's when you're like, oh man.
Well, and we're going to talk a little bit about, and maybe it's a good place to start or take the conversation to next, and we can go back and forth if there's other questions you guys have. But the process of after this, you said you now ended up back in the States. How long between the time you stepped on the IED and then you said they got you back to the States? What time gap are we talking about?
I'd say about a week. I think I got there the first week of August. I do remember the last thing before going out, they took me to Kandahar Air Force Base, and they threw me on a steel table. It's cold as heck. Doctors all around me talking about me like I wasn't a person. And I was tripping. I was on fentanyl, and I was like, what's up, guys? And they're just like looking down at me, and they look at each other, and then they just put me out. And then I wake up in an incubator in Germany. My lungs were shot. They're like 15%. That's all they were working at. And after that was stabilized, then I remember there was a really nice nurse. I don't remember what she looks like, but she would watch Big Bang Theory with me. And I was just like, well, this is great,
Yeah, managing the pain at that point became priority.
Oh, they had me so drugged up.
Yeah.
All I remember is certain things on the show. I think what I remember most, because I'd never seen the show before, but I remember like on the cutscenes, there's like planets flying around or whatever, and I was just like, whoa, that's fine.
You're freaking out.
Yeah, it's freaking gnarly.
It's amazing what you remember when you're looking back. Why did that memory stick in there, right? That's kind of weird. Yeah. You're back in the States, and you kind of touched on it. You're starting to see yourself, right? You're looking in the mirror. You're starting to come to the realization things are kind of not going to be the same. I've had this conversation with you, and it's not an easy one, but you can go as far or as not, as shallow or as deep as you want.
Yeah.
That process over the next, not just few weeks, but months, your mental process, the physical stuff we'll touch on in a minute. I would assume the physical stuff is hard, but the mental stuff gets way harder.
Oh yeah, it was a shit show.
Yeah, how do you walk through that, and how did your attitude look and your mindset? How dark did it get, and what brought you in and out of it?
So, pre-injury, I was roughly 6'2", 220. I thought I was God's gift to women. I thought I was just the most alpha dude around. Then all of a sudden, you get humbled very quickly. So at that time of the injury, my issues were more surface level. It's like, oh my God, no one's ever going to love me. I'm all alone. I'm no longer the big alpha jacked man anymore. Like, it's just the stupid stuff. I remember doing push-ups in my bed. My dad would have to hold my legs up, and I still had a giant hole in my hand. And because I was so convinced that I had to be a certain way, right? And then when you realize you'll never be like that, that shift, it can really eat you. It can get dark very quick. But it took a while for me to really understand, like, my life wasn't over. It's just the end of a life. And I remember I had a dental appointment, and I hated to walk. It hurt. I didn't like it at all. I'd gained a lot of weight. I was big. And I had a dental appointment, and I was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to put these legs on, and I'm going to walk. So I walked to my dental appointment that was only like 600 feet from the barracks, but that was like the first win. It's like, okay, I can do this, like, let go of who you were, focus on who you can be, and keep going. But you say that, and it took about 40 seconds to cover that. Yeah. That's not a 40-second process, though, yeah. Man. So what you said it's the walk to the dentist, but were there voices around you that were telling you it's going to be okay, or were there voices giving you some hard truths? Was there something in the rehab? Was it a family? I'm imagining you didn't do this transition in your brain by yourself, or was it one of those things you had to say, it's just me and I've got to depend on me on this? It was me. After I quit feeling sorry for myself, rehab was supposed to be very therapeutic and healing, but it was actually it was horrible. Because while I was there, I was ran over in a crosswalk. I was robbed. I almost drowned in a kayak. And this is all within a calendar year.
What kind of rehab did they send you to, man? What part of town was the rehab in, man? We got to do better than that.
It was interesting. So every time there were so many things that could have kept me in my shell and kept me in the darkness, but I just really gravitated towards the light. And I think something that really helped me was I was really big into fitness before I got hurt. Mm-hmm. And you have a choice when you get down. You can either stay down or you can get up. A lot of people would rather you do drugs or drink the pain away or find something that's unhealthy. I found a very healthy stressor for me, or de-stressor, in fitness again. My hand, like I said, my right hand's pretty jacked up. They told me I wouldn't be able to lift with it again. So my bench press days were over, but I remember doing 135 for the first time, and I was like, okay, well, let's try again. And I got to 225, and I think I hit 300 before I retired. But just knowing that I could still do the things that they said I couldn't do, that made me realize, like, I'm going to live the life I want to live, not the life I was told I can live.
That's good. We're going to talk about the Invictus Games in just a minute, where you're at currently. But I want to kind of take it from there, and now you've got this mind shift, right? I'm transitioning, and life may be different, but it doesn't mean it's over. What happened after that? Like, how did that manifest itself after you walked to the dentist office? And then I want to talk about the technology of the prosthetics. I think that's fascinating stuff too. I'm assuming you don't have the same prosthetics you had from when you started. I'm assuming they've changed.
Yeah, I have a newer version, but it's roughly the same.
Yeah.
I think that first walk to the dentist office with my cane and stuff like that, that was what I needed, something positive. And once I did that, I took myself off the opioids they gave me. They recommended I don't drop to zero very quickly, but I was off within like a week, and then I remembered the withdrawal. So I understand like substance abuse. I understand how it's very hard to kick a habit. I mean, I felt like my shoulder blades were ripping out of my back. I would cry, I'd smile, I'd want to be in the dark, and then I'd want to be in the light. But after about 2 weeks, it passed. And once my head was clear, that made things much easier for me to focus on the light, which was, healthy living and just movement.
So, Jason, just to kind of, for people who don't know your whole story, from the time of the original incident in Afghanistan until you stopped doing the opioids, how long were you into the recovery process at that point?
Less than a year. Let me see.
But a big part of a year you were on opioids.
About 7 months. Yeah, took me about 7 months to understand, like, hey, you're going to be okay. I remember saying something to a guy that I served with, and two stories about this guy. One, the first time I saw him, he served with me, and he got injured too. He lost his leg right at the ankle, so he lost his foot. And I remember him rolling into my bed room at the hospital, and he was like, man, I ain't never going to be the same again, dude. And here I am with my hand sewed to my groin, right? Because I had to keep blood flow to keep it alive before they could do surgery, with no legs. And I'm just like, bro, what? like, come on, man.
Got to find a different room, man.
yeah, come on, dude.
Got to find a different room.
And then one day we were sitting in the room and we were talking about some of the guys that had gained a lot of weight. I'm like, man, I'm glad I didn't gain a lot of weight. You can't see it on me. He just stared at me like I was delirious. And I was like, oh, man. So I looked in the mirror and it was just frump. Yeah. I was like, oh, dear.
Did I look fat in the shirt?
Yeah, time to lock it in.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Well, that determination comes out, right?
I mean,
and that's kind of the mindset that you had before that, the tragedy. Then afterwards, you just adopt the same mindset. You just redirect it to a different way, right?
Yeah.
You said something I want to touch on. How long were you, when did you retire? When did you leave? And the time from the injury to leaving the military?
So I got hurt July 25th, 2012 and retired February 27th of 2014.
And you were how old when the incident occurred?
27.
So I'm going to make an assumption here. The transition from leaving the military to civilian life, it seems like your story, all our stories are, but yours especially are out there, are just full of these big transitional moments.
Yeah.
Was that a hard transition, I'm assuming, or were you kind of already out technically in your mind?
It would have been hard, but I met my future wife after my injuries. I met her in December of 13. So we were moving in February of 14 together. So I had something to look forward to. But I do understand how the shift from being told you can be over $500,000 worth of equipment in the military and then go to Lowe's and be like, oh, you're underqualified to drive a forklift. Like, I understand how that can eat at the mental health of the veteran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I ever heard your name, and it was right around the time you came home. I was talking to Andrew and Tori Smith. And they were telling me that you had just got home. And I think you were living in like a small apartment.
I was.
And it wasn't fit for anyone with any kind of, you know, issues like you have. What was that like when you realized now you're not under the supervision of doctors and whatnot? You're now on your own, and now you got to navigate whatever comes next. What was all that like in your, like, mentally and also just living in that apartment trying to get around?
Yeah, that was a big shock for me because up until retiring, I just assumed every door was wide. Every place had a ramp. Everything was accessible to me. But once you get out into the real world, you realize, like, there's like one ramp and it's 80 feet at the end of the sidewalk, right? So if you park here, you've got to roll.
Right.
And then the bathroom doors, I remember having to crawl through, like, park at the door, crawl through the toilet and stuff like that. And it's just things I didn't think about, you know, when you first get out, you're just like, oh, I'm just going to live a normal life. But I do think that my fitness level throughout my journey has really helped. I left rehab pretty lean. I was probably like 155, 160. I'm 180, 188 now. And so it was just a different type of fit there versus what I am now. So it was definitely functional for me and my injuries then.
Can I want to hear the story of how you met your now wife, right? You met her. She became your girlfriend while you were still on active duty in recovery, right?
Yeah.
Can we hear that story?
Yeah. So I was actually on leave. My wife's going to kill me. I was on leave and I was with somebody else. And this somebody else had told me she was pregnant. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have a baby. She was pregnant, but not with me. She was with her ex-husband, who they were just kind of canoodling. I would stay upstairs, and they would go downstairs because they shared a son. I thought they were just doing father-daughter, son
Holy
stuff.
crap.
Yeah, so they're doing that. And I remember going to the gym like 2 days after, like, exiting myself from that situation. And I knew her brother, but didn't even know she existed. So she approached me at Gold's Gym on Lee Highway, and she's like, "Hey, I'm Lauren, Britton's sister." And I was like, "Oh, Brittany." But because I don't go to the gym to look at women. If I see a woman in front of me doing squats, the hat gets pulled down. I don't care about any of that. I'm here to work and be my best version of myself, right? And she was like, "No, my name's Lauren." I was like, "Okay," like, "See ya." And she left, and I got invited to a family dinner by her brother Britton and her mom, and I showed up, and seeing her in gym attire, which is, it accents the figure, didn't even focus on that. When I saw her in a hoodie and jeans, I was like, oh my God, she's an angel. So I saw her and I was just like, oh man, she's stunning.
I got to be honest. She might be upset at the first part of this story, but you're getting to the good part now.
Yeah.
Way to save the story.
Yeah. And so I asked her to go out with her brothers and I that night, and she made up an excuse not to, but we had our first date December 31st. We went to a little, I think it's called El Maison.
Yeah.
And then we went to Hair of the Dog downtown. And then from there, we've just been inseparable.
Nice Irish pub. Good job.
Yeah.
Hair of the Dog. Is it still around? I don't think Hair of the Dog's around anymore.
I don't know.
It's
No,
great.
it's
I love
still
it.
there.
Is it
It's
still
still
there?
there.
Still love
A
that
lot of
place.
that stuff has just disappeared lately.
Yeah.
The Hair of the
it
Dog's
has.
still there.
Yeah, that's a really good story. And how long have y'all been married now?
This will be our 10th year.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
That's
September.
fantastic. So were you on your prosthetics by the time you were dating her?
I was. Yeah.
So you're out of the wheelchair entirely
I
by
was.
that point.
So I still stayed in I was probably in the legs, probably 16 hours a day.
Okay.
And then I'd be in the chair for about 2 hours before I went to sleep.
There's got to be fatigue in this learning part.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? The just getting used to, there's a certain amount of pain you get used to, right?
Yes. Yeah, there's a certain
It's
level
still
of
there?
pain that we all have our aches and pains, right? That if we feel them every day, we're just like, nah. But if it elevates a little, you're like, oh, better check that out. But yeah, I live with a certain level of pain every day.
Okay. One of the things that I know that you, and I don't know if you still are active in doing it. I think you might be, but when I first started talking with you, you're very active on helping other veterans
Absolutely.
that have been injured and are transitioning. Is that still something you do? And was that something you did immediately? Were you seeking out to help people in their journey, or is that something? How did you find that?
Yeah. So the way I found out I wanted to help veterans is when I retired, tried to go to Gold's Gym and use their pool and stuff like that. I always saw people staring at me, and my mental headspace was not ready for that. I understand everybody has questions, but until you're ready to answer those questions, you don't want to feel that presence. So I reached out to a nonprofit. Actually, I went to the VA to get medication for my anxiety and stuff, but I found like a 4x6 flyer for a nonprofit called Catch a Lift, plug. And I applied, and they were able to give me means to do cardio at my house through a rower. And I really kicked butt on that rower for about a year. And they reached out to me afterwards like, hey, have you ever thought about helping other veterans? And I'm just like, in the beginning, just being wanted, right? Just being considered for that. And I was like, absolutely, please. That'd be great, because I was done really working on myself. And I find great joy in helping other veterans be the best version of themselves they deem fit, you know? And I've been helping veterans for about 6 years now, 7 years.
Is another mission, right? Is another.
Yeah, it's a purpose for me.
Yeah.
You know, it took me a long time to understand how to lift weights and work out again post-injury. And there's a lot of people that are in the program that are adaptive athletes, missing a hand or missing a leg or having some kind of spinal injury. So if I can cut down that time that took me 4 or 5 years to figure out how to lift with my injuries and cut that into like a week and a half, 2 weeks of proper training for them to understand they can get there quicker than me, that's a win.
Well, yeah, and I would imagine when they meet you and see you and start hearing your story, they might be in one of those same mental places you were. Like, my life's changed; it's not going to be the same. You are sitting in front of them, and they might go, maybe not. Maybe there is life on the other side of this.
I do believe any situation is really as bad as you make it, whatever the outcome would be.
If you could change your positive attitude to make me feel a little bit like I can get, just you being so positive makes me feel like I probably should stop bitching as much as I do in life. All right, so I'm not going to promise we're not going to go backwards and revisit part of your story, but I do want to, we've alluded to it a few times. You just said something about a rower. Are you still rowing at all? Do you do rowing?
Yeah.
I'm asking that facetiously, so let's take this opportunity to talk about what you're doing athletically right now, because it's not simply just going to the gym and doing some cardio for 30 minutes.
Yeah, so in 2021, I applied for something called the DoD Warrior Games, and that's basically the National Wounded Veteran Olympics. Every branch has a team. You've got Team SOCOM, which is a collective team of all the special operations teams like MARSOC, Special Forces, stuff like that. And then you have Air Force, Navy, Army, and Marines. And they just put together the best group of competitors they can. And then we usually go to a place like Disney World and we compete for about 13 days. And in 2021 was canceled because of COVID. So I went back in 2022. And there, I'd always rowed, and I didn't know how I stacked up against other people. But we do something called a 1 minute row and a 4 minute row. And they call the 4 minute an endurance and then the 1 minute a sprint. And I won that year. I won the next year. I won this year. So I think I'm decent.
Yeah, you're not bad at this.
I'm decent at rowing.
Listen, you've said it to me off the air. Somebody's gonna have to go to extremes to beat you on the road, right? You're not getting off the road.
So actually, I will tell you this. I got my first non-gold medal this year in Warrior Games, and it was by a foot.
What?
Wow. So my roommate, what an amazing man, a specimen, a physical specimen. His name is Sean Lee. He beat me by 1 foot in the 1 minute row. He had a leg issue. He's full bodied. He had a leg issue that didn't allow him to use his lower body to row. And I'm on a fixed seat rower, so I don't use my lower body at all. And he got put into my class, and he was just going. The first 30 seconds he was up by 2 meters, and then I took over by 2 meters. And I kept going. The timer ran out, but as that time ran out, he pulled one more time. I went to my race cool down, because you don't just drop the handle. You slow down and get your breathing back. And I was like, all right, 8. No, baby. And I look up and I'm like, what? 2? What does that mean? I've never seen that. I've never seen that. So it was so close. They had to go and look at the times and look at the splits, and it was less than a foot that he beat me by.
A little bit of ego.
Dude, he's twice my size.
Yeah.
He's a monster. So if I had to get beat by somebody, I'm glad it was him.
Yeah, but a foot. Come on, man. I got to do that
I
again.
do better.
You got to do that. Yeah, what are you doing?
Rematch.
Yeah, rematch.
Yeah.
And how's the bench press going? Didn't you?
Spectacular.
Yeah. What do you bench now?
So in a
in
a competition setting, I hit 410.
Oh wow!
And the way that they do that there, it's different than they do it at the gym. The legs have to be up. It's a Paralympic style bench press. So they tie your legs down. There's no leg drive, and it's all just upper body strength.
Oh wow!
So it's quite interesting. I can show you guys videos later if you want to see.
Yeah,
But,
I'd like to see some of that.
It's very cool. I know. I think I opened with 380. You get 3 lifts. I did 380, 401, and 410.
So as part of that, though, like a normal, because I've been to bench press competitions before with some buddies back in the day.
Yeah.
Is it you pick your own entry
You
level?
do.
Yeah. So I've always my buddy would always, he only weighed about 195.
Yeah.
But he was just strong, and he would wait till they got to 405 or 420, and then he would enter, and they'd be like, "Why has that guy not gone for his first lift yet?" And that's the guy that what did you start at?
So I started at 380, and
Dude,
and
that's pretty hot.
I'm a humble guy, I'll tell you that, and I don't ever discredit anybody's abilities. But my goal is when I compete, it's a job. I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna rep it. I'm not gonna like flash and flex for the camera. I'm gonna hit it and I'm gonna roll away.
Yeah.
I take great pride in being able to win the competition on my opening press, because everybody has to do 3. But if you don't hit your opener, you can't really go up.
Yeah.
You have to stay there, or you can go up 1 kilogram, I think. So I won on my opening press here, and then I won at Invictus on my opening press.
So the Invictus, what is that?
So that's the Global Wounded Veteran Olympics. There
That's
were
was
23 countries that competed.
And what all events did you compete in those games?
So I did powerlifting, which is the bench press, volleyball, rowing. I think that's it.
Yeah. And how did you do on those? What would your?
So I won with a 401 press, and I failed 410 in Germany, and that's why it was so important that I hit it this time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I won in rowing, won the 1 in 4 minute.
Yeah.
And then volleyball, I don't think we didn't medal.
That's okay. Was it fun?
Yeah.
Did you like playing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the rowing's in a machine, right?
It is. It's a Concept 2 rower that you see at the gym and stuff like that.
Have you actually tried to go out and do any kind of rowing on the river or on a lake or something in like a real shell or something?
So it's been offered to me.
Yeah.
I've gone up to Virginia a few times to speak to one of the guys. His name is Coach Patrick, and he's pretty high up there. And he's a really good rower, but I just haven't had the ability to get out there yet. Because I'm a very, very big like homebody guy. I'm a big family first.
Yeah.
So if I'm leaving and it's just me and it only benefits myself, I'm not really going. But if my wife comes, I'll go anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you the relationships you've made through the games? Are there made some pretty good friendships through that?
Oh yeah, lifelong friendships.
Yeah.
You know, and honestly too, like you guys have served. What we miss most, and what people ask us, like, what was it like? You always immediately think about like the buddies, the times you spent together, the time that Johnson peed his pants or something. Like it's the funny stuff that really.
I don't know who Johnson is,
right?
but shout out,
yeah,
man.
It
Poor
resonates
guy.
with
Bad
you,
day
the camaraderie, right? And being able to do these games and then wearing Army across my chest again, and being with my brothers and sisters, that makes everything that much more special. Because it's not, you can go there and be solely focused on you, but you're going to miss so much, right? You got to look at all the growth these other athletes are getting, and they've literally been at the bottom. They've hurt themselves. They're fighting. They're grinding back, and they're proving that we get seen for our disabilities, but here you're put on a platform to showcase your abilities. That's massive for the mental health. You need that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me say this, man, because I've known you for several years now, and you've always been like Clint said, like the positive dude, and you have been, man, and you're a light in a room, man, because you're positive and you're approachable and all those things. But I remember, like, I don't know, the first time I ever talked to you, but you said to me, we were at somebody's house at a fundraiser, I think, and you said, yeah, I kind of just want to disappear. Like, and man, you sit here and you can tell your story, man, like no flinching. And there's plenty of things that I'm sure are hard to talk about, man. But how you handle all this, which we know is not easy, is inspiring. It really is. And so thanks for just being you, man, and being here, being here with us.
I have some pictures that I'll show you guys later. There's some podium photos. If I can compete and bring light to a veteran community or talk about veterans, boom. Lights on, right? Once I'm isolated, I have a picture that looks like a DUI mugshot. I'm the only one up there on the podium with a gold medal around my neck, and I'm just like, just disgusted. Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about one more thing when it comes to competing, and then we're going to talk about your life now a little bit.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, I'm not disagreeing with Josh, but I'm a little pissed you're here because you bench 400 pounds. And I don't care what happened to you. The fact that you can still bench 400 pounds, really, I'm like, God darn. All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the EPSIs real quick. The ESPYs.
Yeah.
So there's this big award thing for the ESPN. Tell everybody how you got in that video. I think it's a very cool thing. It's a big achievement. You sent me the video the other day, and I just want to make sure we mention it before I talk about your farm.
Yeah. So
the
ESPYs is just a collective award show for athletes, professional athletes, and I was approached at the Warrior Games to do a segment on it, and they took me to a room and asked me a few questions, and it was to do a tribute video to Invictus because this year's Pat Tillman Award winner was Prince Harry, and they showed the video before he accepted his award, and I was sitting on my front porch, and I didn't know at what capacity I would be in, and my wife and my mother-in-law was sitting next to me, and I didn't really tell a lot of people until after it showed up, because if I'm just like a blip and that's it, I'm just like, oh man, I don't want to tell anybody about that. But I had some pretty good FaceTime.
Yeah, I saw it.
There's a part on that video. You see when I hit that bench press and pointed? I was pointing at my wife in the stands.
Very cool.
And she thought that was really cool. And it's just really cool to be able to advocate for the veteran community and be up there and just talk about what these games mean to us.
All right, so how long have you had your farm? I got to talk about this part
Almost
of it.
a year now.
When I first met you, it was a podcast we did online, video, about this story a little bit. We might have gone in more detail today. But then the other couple times we've talked, have been on a radio show about nutrition and supplements. And I realized you moved. How big is your farm now?
60 acres.
60 acres. Yeah. And what are the animals? And don't mention the new animal yet. What are the animals you have right now? And are you growing your own crops and stuff now too?
Not yet, but we want to.
I like saying crops instead of stuff. You know, crops like you're out there with overalls.
Yeah, I'm a real boy. You know,
chewing a straw.
Yeah.
All right. So how big is it? 60 acres.
60
and what kind of
acres,
animals you got?
We have horses, many donkeys, many cows, chickens, goats, ducks.
Do you have ducks? Can't ducks just leave?
Yeah, I have. I had ducks. I have a duck now. Something gets hungry at night.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, people say they have ducks.
Reality,
and, those things can just leave though.
Well,
so it's not like
they've stayed around within a general 500-foot circle.
Okay,
they don't really tend to go too far.
But most animals, if you feed them, they're going to hang out for a while.
They know that.
Like
That's
kids.
their source. Yeah.
It's like kids.
It's like me.
I bet you absolutely. His wife says the same thing. If I keep feeding him, he shows up every day. And how many kids you got? Two. And they love the farm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And you say you don't grow anything now, but you're going to start.
We want to. Yeah, we have a few, little things like blueberry bushes and stuff like that, but they haven't released.
You doing water collection, rainwater collection?
So no, but we're on well water.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know some of these questions to ask because so eventually, how about power source? Do you got or eventually, do you want to get it to where if everything goes dark, you're good?
Yeah, I do believe. A certain group's biggest fear is for us to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And I want to be self-sufficient.
Yeah. And exactly how do I get to your house in case it goes down? Take a left at the Dollar General and go how
Look
far?
for the
down?
one duck.
That's about right. Yeah, if there's a Dollar General.
No crap.
That's right. Yeah.
Say that, the only two things you can say in the South is directions or Dollar General or Waffle House, man.
Everywhere.
Just look for the yellow glow.
Absolutely.
Just follow the yellow glow.
Yeah.
I had some.
If you go to the Family Dollar, you've gone too far. Come back to the Dollar General.
I had some competitors from Australia that were here competing this year in Orlando with us. And after the games, they came up to our house, and they, you can't shoot guns, you can't shoot fireworks, can't do certain things in Australia you can do here.
Right.
My wife took her name is Laura, and her friend Cooper took them to Dollar General, and Laura saw a man with a gun on his hip, and she's like, "There's a man with a gun." And Lauren's like, yeah, probably. Yeah. So we let her shoot fireworks as well. I let her shoot some rifles, and she's like, "This is crazy."
Yeah,
I can't do any of that.
Did your wife like shooting? Is she?
Not as much as I wish.
Yeah, it's okay.
But she'll do it.
We're not gonna get you in trouble
If it
now.
serves the purpose, she'll do it.
All right, the last question I have just for you specifically, and then I got it. We'll kind of pick each other's brain 5 more minutes. What's the new animal you got? This new fancy attitude, ego-driven little animal.
Yeah, it's called a silkie. It's a chicken, and they've got it looks like it's feathers, but it looks like hair, and you got to trim around their eyes because it'll grow over their eyes. They look like the biggest emo chickens you've ever seen.
I've never heard of that before. That's
they're
cool,
fantastic.
man.
And
He
their feet
showed me
are
the
weird.
picture. They look like they have an attitude, don't they? They
Their
walk
feet
around
are real
long.
weird. Chickens, they have certain set of toes. These chickens have like 7 toes.
Really?
And I thought they were deformed. Like, oh no, they come like that. I was like, gosh, we should have led with that. I don't know if I'd have bought them.
So how many do you have?
We have 6.
The feet are
We have
freaking
20
you out.
chickens, but we have
That's,
6 siblings.
that's the thing that's freaking you out is the chicken's feet. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I don't have any.
Yeah.
I get foot envy. And them things aren't. Not to
listen,
look
you
at.
can make fun. I what? Now that you've opened the door,
I'm-
be
I'm-
careful with that though.
I'm gonna change the subject just a little bit
Yeah.
for something less fun. And Clint, you may cut this part if you don't think it's appropriate
wow.
for your podcast.
Hold on a second.
As a
Now there's silence. Go ahead. Yeah.
as a veteran who served in Afghanistan, what were you going through mentally when we withdrew?
It was a shit show. And being part of a nonprofit, we were versed and told how hard it could be for certain veterans that felt like what they did over there was non-existent or didn't matter. And I don't, you can't expect everybody to think of every end, right? But that was a slap in the face to a lot of the veteran community who felt like they've lost someone over there or they've lost parts of them, that it was all for nothing. So that's a very touchy subject for a lot of people. I could have been done a lot better.
Yep.
Yeah, and we talk about this on the other podcast, and we've addressed it a little bit on here, the first 2 episodes, about mission drift, when organizations kind of forget their purpose, right? And we've talked a little bit, and this is not designed to be a political podcast. We might sprinkle out some opinions in from time to time, but I think one of the things that has frustrated me and I'm not a veteran, I'm going to say that a bunch on this podcast if I need to remind folks, is watching the military sometimes have the mission drift, right? They forget what their purposes are sometimes, and then you get out of the military, and it sounds like having a mission and being very focused is such a healthy thing, and I'm kind of sometimes wish that the people in charge would go, let's get back to mission. Let's get back to doing things the way they are supposed to be done. My dad and I talk about this quite a bit. And, I use that terminology not because I came up with it, because I've heard it from former veterans like Eric and my dad and John Ballinger and other folks. So mission is important.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You got to know what you're doing. And it's still, I'm mission driven. Like when I wake up in the morning, I know what I got to do. If I'm not lifting, I'm immediately drinking a cup of coffee, then going out and doing certain things. If I'm lifting, I'm prepping a different way. But the mission is still the same, to have the best day, be the best version of myself I can be.
The mental part of it, real quick, is have you found that you talk politics and military stuff with your friends that are in the military? Will y'all share that, that bond? Do y'all get on together and just kind of rant?
Yeah, and I've been out for 10 years, and I feel like there's a certain age that it really kicks in. You're either into like old history or just political views,
Right.
And there's a few of them that are political. I don't know enough to really hold my own in it, but I know what I want to see as a country, and I voice those.
Is it mental health sometimes too? I just got off all social media 3 or 4 months ago.
Smart.
Oh yeah, I got a business page, but back in March, I'm done with all of
Comparison
it.
is the thief of joy, man. There's so many people that just eat themselves up.
Well, and I kept getting the dings and wondering why. Oh, what are they looking at? Why is she saying that? Who likes that post? And I was like, I'm a grown ass man. I'm closer to 60. It's like am I running for a class president? What am I doing?
Yeah.
This
When
is
you
stupid.
say it like that, it's like I kind of want to put my phone away too.
Well, but I mean, I do for the business stuff. It's important. It's how I make some money and some of my living. But the mental health part of it is, to me, on the social media side, is just as big a part for, I would think, for you as any place else. Are you on a lot on social media? You're not on it too much.
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but I only post family, animals, or fitness.
I was going to say, but you also have an influence. I was just a guy on social media. There's people that probably take a lot of motivation away from your story. So, all right.
I mean, your lifting videos are crazy.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, they are.
They're
man.
stupid.
I mean,
That's dumb.
We talked about the amount of weight you're lifting is like,
That's fantastic.
Look at that, dude.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Hey, Clint, there's
Yeah.
just big picture, because I want to bring you into this too, John.
Yeah.
When you thought about joining the Army originally, you made that decision to do it. You talked about both your parents had served. Just in like 30 seconds, did you have other family members that had served? How natural was it for you to think that way, that that's what you needed to do to serve your country?
Yeah, my uncle served in the Air Force, which is my mother's brother. And, like I said, I always knew I wanted to do it. I remember taking my first ASVAB as a senior in high school and trying to prepare mentally for that. But once I graduated, I moved to California, and that's when stuff got crazy. So I came back home, and I was like, all right, you need to be an adult. This is stupid. Do something that you're going to be proud of, and your parents are going to be proud of.
Yeah. So my dad served as a Marine reservist until he was lieutenant colonel. He did 20 plus years. He only did about 3 years of active duty though. But my grandfather was in the Navy, World War II. My dad had older brothers in the Navy, and then my great uncle, who was also my godfather, was a 2-star general in the Marine Corps. I actually started out Marine option in ROTC, and then they opened up a flight slot in the Navy, and that's how I ended up in the Navy. My dad was a little disappointed, but I got to fly instead of sticking my face in the mud.
Yeah.
but it was natural for me growing up too that I was going to serve, and so I ended up going 4 years of military school, then 5 years of active duty. What about you?
Yeah, I had no path like that. I remember talking to my granddad about World War II when I was a kid, because he was in ski patrol in Canada and was injured, and then so he was in the Army at the time, and then got out and then ended up in the Navy. But when he was in the Navy, he was kind of beat up from his injuries, so he basically just painted ships and stuff. And so he would talk about World War II all the time. But outside of that, not really a connection. And even when I enlisted, and I told part of that story last time we were here, I didn't tell anybody I was doing it, because once I made my mind up, this is what I'm going to do, I didn't want anybody to talk me out of it. And I knew where I was at that time, that somebody might have been able to talk me out of it. So I just went and enlisted, and then went home and said, I'm going to the Marine Corps. I'm going to Parris Island in February. And they were like, you're doing what? And so it was not anything that was like a life plan. It was something that I was like, I need this, so I'm doing this. We'll see what happens.
That's one of the smarter things I've heard, is starting Parris Island in February instead of June.
Right. I actually didn't ship until I think ended up late March, and so I was there like March, April, May. So it was getting hot, but boy, yeah.
So what year was that?
92.
Yeah.
I enlisted in 91 and shipped in 92.
One thing I didn't ask you about, and then I'm gonna give you both the chance to answer this question. If you could go back into the military, is there something you would like to have done, either in a division or another branch? In other words, you were an aviator. If you could go back and you go, okay, I'd like to do it, but I would like to do, I'd like to maybe see a Marine. I'd like to be a Marine this, or do that. Same, I'm going to ask you again in a minute. Any stories from boot camp for you, dude? We got stories from everybody else on boot camp. Any good stories from boot camp before I let you out of here? Because after this, man, we won't talk about your story every time you come on. We'll have guests from the VA a lot of times. Look at that smile.
I got restarted in boot camp.
Oh, what is that? Okay.
So I got in trouble, and they made me restart past a certain phase.
So you brought a little of those California decisions with you?
I had an issue. So we have a PT test, and I had an issue with a soldier who could do 2 push-ups and a sit-up and couldn't run, and they were going to pass him. And I thought the right thing to do was to confront that soldier and voice my opinion, and that was absolutely not the case. So they taught me that I can't change the things that I don't enjoy or I don't approve of. And so they made me go back and do another 4 weeks of basic.
Oh my gosh. I kind of feel you clean that story up a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Once we're out there, I'll
It's
tell
like
you
a
the whole
very
gist of it.
sanitized version of what really happened, man.
There's this Marine, he passed away several years ago. He was at Iwo Jima and Chosin Reservoir and whatnot, and he did a lot of stuff that you look at, how'd you do all that? And he said, when you're in the Marine Corps, you do a lot of stuff you're not supposed to do. So I think being in the military sometimes is breaking some rules, even when you're not, that's not the thing to do. Sometimes you do it anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Jocko Willnick says this, and I love listening to his podcast. And the military ones, the stories I love too, but it's also the leadership stuff. He talks about, we think, or he said, you would think as a civilian, you get into the military, you do exactly what you're told, you show it, and there's no deviation. He goes, dude, all they are humans.
Yeah.
And they're usually really stubborn type A humans. Yeah. And so they're probably a lot of times more determined to make the bad decisions than you would be,
There's
as far as a civilian.
About Chesty Puller, who was Marine Corps General, Medal of Honor recipient. He was looking for some Marines for this mission. And so he goes to this place. He didn't even know any of the Marines. And so what he did, he walked in and he asked for their record books. Mm-hmm. And he started looking through them and pulled them in stacks. And he goes, what are you looking for? I'm looking for guys who've been in the brig. That's what he wanted to do with it. Yeah. And so
it's like the Dirty Dozen or
sometimes
something.
some guys that break some rules is who you want.
My favorite other Chesty Puller story is when they demonstrated the flamethrower for the first time, getting ready for World War II, and they brought it out, and they're actually going to have Marines equipped with flamethrowers. Mm-hmm. And what was his response to that?
I don't know.
Where do you put the bayonet on that thing?
It's funny you said that about the military, because when I joined, I thought I'm never going to laugh again. A machine. That's a frat house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
With somebody that yells at you a bunch, right?
Yeah.
But if you laugh at boot camp, like if you laugh out loud, you're gonna get some trouble.
Oh, you're done.
But that said, hilarious stuff happens all the time, and you're just trying to hold it in.
Yeah.
And the drill instructor, Marine Corps drill instructor has these big covers, they call them hats.
Smokey
And-
the Bear hat.
Yeah. And so, when they're given a instruction, there's no like notes, right? But they'll take their cover off, and there's like an index card in there they're looking at. But you can see them sometimes when something funny happens, take their hat off, like look at their card, and you can see their shoulders start to shake a little bit, and you realize that guy's laughing too.
Yeah,
He's trying.
Because they're the most military bear unit you can imagine, but at the same time they're human, man. So if something funny happens, they're laughing too.
Yeah, it's a great story on a podcast years later is exactly what those are. I want to ask this one last question. We'll wrap it up. You doing okay? We're about to roll out of here. Okay. As far as time, if you could go, is there something, if you could go back in the military and say, I'm not saying you don't appreciate what you did, but let's wave a magic wand and go back in time and say, I would like to see if I could do that, or I'd like to be part of that branch or this particular job and skill set inside the military. Does anybody have anything you want to go first on this one? Yeah, what you got?
Yeah, I wanted to be a ranger.
Oh, really?
So the way it works, you have to do RASP, Ranger Assessment Program. And I re-enlisted the day of the Ducky March. It's when you do like a faux march with a rubber gun. And the day when you re-enlist in the Army, you get the day off and the day after. So I was like, well, I'm going to take my day off. And they're like, you don't want it bad enough. And they took my packet and got rid of it. I was like, oh, shit. Now, I'm not saying I would have made it, but at least I would have known. Right. So that I have that fear of never knowing. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing, and I said this last time
Yeah.
about combat. Like I was never deployed, and kind of have this feeling about not that I want to go to combat, but you feel like you maybe didn't do the whole job, like there was something missing there. But yeah, to be part of an elite unit, part of Marine Recon or Navy SEALs or one of those things. I mean, I think that's one of the things you're like, I would have loved to at least give it a shot. Yeah.
Anything for you?
I'm looking back, and so during my years of military school, the summers we got to spend time on ships. And even though I flew in the Navy, I flew a plane that basically is land based. So I never really spent any time on ships once I was done with flight school and got assigned to P3s. But getting to do the surface warfare stuff was actually pretty fun. The summer I got to be a midshipman as a crew on a frigate. I was actually on the Stark, which was the frigate that had been hit by missiles that was sent over by Iran like in 1987. And I was on the training that they were doing the first time after the ship had been put together. They call it refresher training. And I spent 5 weeks out of Guantanamo basically being a surface warfare junior officer as a midshipman. And I actually enjoyed the hell out of that. Not as much as I did flying, but I think I would have enjoyed that too in the Navy.
No. All right. Guys, we've been right at an hour, and I try to keep it around that. Unless y'all have other questions or any topics y'all would specifically like to bring up today. Yeah, go for it.
I do want to mention one thing.
Yeah, please.
Because you asked him about boot camp stories, and we talked about it last time. And when you asked me, I hadn't thought about it at all. I kind of was on the top of my head. But I remembered one when I was leaving, and I think you guys can relate to this. When you go to boot camp, a lot of it's physical stuff, but there's no downtime. So any 5 minutes you have, somebody's teaching you something, or somebody's going to come in and talk to you about something. I remember one day they brought in this guy to give us a talk, and he was he's probably 80 years old. He was an older guy, but he'd been a Marine a long time ago, and I forget what he did or any of that stuff. But what he said to me is something I remember to this day, and he said, when you leave here, everyone who leaves here is going to take some of this with you the rest of your life. And that thing that you apply to the rest of your life, people who've not been through this will not understand you. And I feel like that's the thing about not just Marines for sure, but veterans in general. Like there's parts of our lives that people who have not been through it just don't get it, just don't understand what we've been through. And it's not like we're special. It's just a different experience. And so I appreciate this here, so that maybe some folks who don't quite understand some of those things, maybe they can understand it a little bit better.
Well, real quick, one of the reasons I want to do this, and if you're all go comfortable with it, I'll just wrap it up. One of the reasons I wanted to do this was because the stuff you'd put out is fantastic. It's the interview style. That is great. I love hearing those stories. Jocko, same thing. But rarely, or is there, and I'm not saying they're not out there, but I just haven't come across a lot of them. Is there a podcast where there's this table and you guys are sharing your stuff with each other? You have your own set of friends, right? But not all your friends are veterans. And I think it's good for people to hear veterans talk. That's why I get really smile if the cameras. I smile when you guys start asking you guys questions. That to me is the purpose of it. My job is just to, every now and then I'll throw something out there, but the whole purpose is so people kind of can hear you vet the fun stuff, the serious stuff, the lessons, and the horrors, and how you turn that stuff around. So that's the reason I'm glad we're doing this, is so y'all can do that exact same thing.
Yeah.
Y'all can vet this in real time.
It's cool, man.
Yeah, I think it's good stuff. And again, I got to give a shout out to the VA, because starting the next visit, I think they're going to be sending a guest in. So what I plan on doing is having the first half of the show kind of be like this, and then the second half of the show will be a guest from the VA, and we'll be talking a specific topic. And the reason I wanted you guys in on these as much as possible is because the ability for me to ask really relevant questions is going to have a ceiling. The questions you guys can ask will be much more poignant and specific and relevant, because y'all have been there and done that. So that's just a glimpse in the future of Oath and Pledge podcast. Jason, thanks for coming off your farm.
Yes, sir.
And good luck on all your competition. And I hope you don't bench 400 next time.
Thanks for sharing that story, man.
Yeah,
that was
Yeah,
awesome.
we appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thanks for giving me a platform to do it.
Absolutely.
And normally, as a veteran, saying to other guys, thank you for your service feels silly, but you and I joined around the same time. You kept the tradition going. So, you were 15 years after us, and you were still willing to go serve.
Well,
Thank God there's kids today that are lined up taking that oath and willing to show up and do it.
We saw you guys do it, right? And that resonated in us. And I feel like that's very important for the younger generation. I'm going to call it a phase. Whatever this phase is they're going through, I just hope that they're ready to stand up and fight for the country that's so important and impactful for us. I hope it keeps going.
That's the thing, though, with it. I'll shut up after this. The culture that we're living through, man, those military leaders training these folks, that job is not easy, man. It's not. And so, good luck to all those folks out there who are doing that work. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you all. Bye.